Let's talk about blue skies today. Welcome back, guys. Sorry I wasn't here last week. If you saw my really short video, you would have seen that I was a little bit under the weather, and I knew if I tried to just rush a video through just to put it up for the sake of it, it definitely wouldn't have been of the quality that I would expect of myself. So I thought better to just put it on hold for a week and come back properly this week. So today, as I mentioned, we're going to talk about blue skies and why, as a landscape photographer, we're not really a fan of them. I thought I'd make this video this week because for the past couple of weeks here in Sydney, we did have quite a decent run of weather. Where apart from a couple of days of rain, we did have mostly clear blue skies. But as a landscape photographer, those aren't really conditions that we're a fan of. And that's what we're going to go over today, where I'll say why we're not a fan of blue skies, when we might actually want them though, but also how we can work around them if blue skies are all we've got. I've got a couple of images from the past 2 years roughly, showing what you can and can't do when you do have clear blue skies and how you can work around them. Because that way, if you are out shooting landscapes and all you've got is a clear blue sky, which, don't get me wrong, is not bad, but how you can work around them if what you're doing is landscape photography and you don't want to have a clear blue sky in your photos for whatever the reason may be. So as landscape photographers, why don't we want to have clear blue skies when we're taking our images? And there's actually a couple of reasons for that. One of them is that it almost looks like a half-finished painting where they've done the foreground, they've done the midground, but then when it came to the sky, they just said, you know what, I'm going to finish here and just paint it blue or black or whatever the case may be. And it's the same when you're taking photos because like if you look at this picture from Mrs. Macquarie's chair, which I took just after sunset, or a little bit after sunset actually, you can see whilst there is a nice gradient from the orange to the indigo to the blue and the black as the sun has set, it does look very unfinished and empty there compared to this other one that I took, which was during sunset, and there were clouds in the sky above the upper house, and you had the sunset reflecting off them, which gave a lot more drama and texture and interest into the image in comparison. So just by comparing these two images side by side, you can see how having clouds in the skies, or at least something there besides just a clear blue sky, provides more texture and interest and drama into your image compared to not having anything there at all. If you look at this other one from Mrs. Macquarie's chair as well, I never seem to have luck whenever I go to Mrs. Macquarie's chair. It's always clear blue skies. But you compare it to this one I took at Cremorne Point where I don't know how it happened, but the sky turned pink as the sun was setting and it was reflecting off all the clouds and even off all of the water as well. It does make for a much nicer image because you do get that light reflecting off both the sky, the clouds, and the water compared to this one from Mrs. Macquarie's chair where it would be nice if I stayed longer and did some star trails, but for a sunset image, unless you're going for that gradient look of the orange to the purple, the indigo, the blue, the black, it's definitely less interesting. But there are cases where they may come in handy, and I'll go over that later. Since we've covered why landscape photographers may not be a fan of clear blue sky, it's also important to present the other side of the argument, which is when you might actually want them, because there are a few instances where clear blue sky is required or even beneficial to the image that you're taking. One of those cases is when you know you're going to be using that image and put text on it. A prime example is this image I took from Mrs. Macquarie's chair earlier, where I filled up the sky with some text and I've also put some text in the water. And by having an image this way, you are able to fill it up with the text that's needed if it is for like magazine cover, magazine articles, or blogs that you might be writing, where you're not actually taking anything away from the image because you're using text to fill out the blank spots that are already there. So in a case like this where you are doing commercial work and you know that they need empty space on the image for whatever reason, having a clear blue sky isn't always a bad thing because you are going to be filling that up with text or other images anyway. Another case for clear blue skies when they may come in handy is when you want to do tropical based images. Like if you look at this one from Bondi Beach that I did a couple months ago before this whole lockdown started, when you're doing something like a beach or a tropical destination, clear blue skies are what always comes into people's heads when they think about it. They think about the beach, the palm trees, the clear sky, the clear water. I can't wait to go on a holiday where I can experience that again. Moving on. But when you're trying to create that sense of emotion of a tropical paradise with the clear blue skies and the palm trees and the sand and the clear waters like in the Caribbean or Southeast Asia, I mean, I've been to places where it's exactly like that and it's almost like a postcard. Having a clear blue sky in those areas is perfect because that's exactly the sort of environment people think of when they think of a tropical paradise. They don't think about overcast or cloudy days, they think about bright sunny days. So that's where having a clear blue sky may come in handy because the destination that you're trying to take a picture of and the emotion that you're trying to create out of it, a clear blue sky is needed versus overcast or clouds in general. Another reason that you may want clear blue skies, which is one of my favorite reasons, and that is to go and shoot star trails. It's something I enjoy doing quite a bit. I was planning on doing it until this lockdown happened, and it's one of the first things to do when I get out. But if you look at this particular picture I took from Kirribilli of the Harbor Bridge and the Opera House with the stars above it, this wasn't my best star trail image, but it's something I'm definitely going to go and recreate as soon as we're allowed to. And I can't do an image like this unless I've got clear blue skies. Except it's nighttime, so it's not blue. But you get what I mean. I can't take images like this if it's cloudy or overcast or anything else beyond just a clear sky, because otherwise you can't see the stars. You can see them a little bit if there are a few clouds and you do a really long exposure, but they will still block out some of the stars, so it just won't look as great. When you want to do star trails, you do need a clear sky, otherwise you'll have like cloud and star. And I mean, if that's the image you're going for, then go for it. But when I want to do star trails, I don't want any clouds in the sky, so fingers crossed. We're out of lockdown soon, and I can go and recreate this image because I really want to do that before summer comes and it's too late to get an image like that. Otherwise, I'll be up till 3 a.m. So now that we've talked about why you may not want blue skies and why you might actually want them as well, because there are different scenarios depending on what you're doing. What if it's a case where, like when I went out for a walk a couple months ago and I showed you, or a couple weeks ago actually, and there were clear blue skies, and how can you work around it? Oh, one way to work around it is to try and fill your image up with anything except the sky. Like in this particular case, I saw the river cat was coming past and I noticed a bird as well. So just quickly snapped a picture, even though I knew my settings weren't right to freeze the bird. That's why it's a bit blurry. But by doing that, you don't really see that much of the sky because you've mostly got the tree, the bird, the river cat, and Parramatta River as well. So by zooming in or focusing on the details and the area in front of you instead of including the sky in it, makes it so that there may be a little bit of blue sky in your image, but not enough so that it's distracting or taking away from everything else in your image as well by being a big space of empty nothing. But what else could you do besides just trying to zoom in and minimize the sky in your image? Because if it's a case like this one from Bradley's Head, where it's a bit hard to do that because everything that I wanted was in the distance and zooming in wasn't much of an option, by changing it from the 3:2 ratio that comes out of the camera to a 16:9, I've cut out quite a bit of the excess sky on top, so you've still got the rocks in the foreground, Sydney Harbour, the bridge, and the Opera House, but some of the sky to at least let you know that it is sunset, but not so much that it's all sky and there's nothing there, which takes away from the rest of the image. So by changing the aspect ratio from a 3:2 if you've got a full frame, or 4:3 if you've got a micro four thirds or a medium format, to something like a 16:9 or even a square ratio if that's applicable to your particular image, finally got there, you are able to play around a bit more with the image and get rid of that sky completely, where it's not taking away from the image anymore because there's less of it actually there. One more that I'll mention, and it's a bit of a controversial one, I'll be the first to admit, is replacing the skies. If you do want to replace the skies, go for it. I've got no beef with it, right? I myself have never done it for multiple reasons. One is that when I go out to try and take a picture, keywords being try, I want to show you exactly how it was when I was there at the time, because that's my goal, is to show you how I see that particular scene. If it's a clear blue sky, so be it, and I've got to work around it or come back at another time when it isn't a clear blue sky. But if you want to replace the skies, either with libraries that you've purchased online or a library of sky images that you've made yourself through the years, I mean, go for it. I'm not going to judge you for changing the skies if that's what you want. But I mention it's controversial because some will say it's still photography, some will say it's not photography anymore. But at the end of the day, as long as you're happy, that's all that really matters, more than anything else. So if you want to replace the sky, go for it. I haven't considered it. It's just the way that I like to take my images. But take of that what you will. But it is one thing you can do to work around blue skies, and that is replace the sky entirely. Photoshop has an option now where they even have a library of skies that you can choose from. I have played around with it, but it's not something I would actually do and say, yes, this is the image I got on the day, because that would technically be lying. I should say that is the image I got and I've replaced the sky. But end of the day, if you want to replace the skies, go for it. If you don't want to, don't. I have no beef with it either way. It's your image. It's up to you what you do with it. So So now that we've spoken about why we may not want to have blue skies in our images as landscape photographers, but also particular cases where we may want them, or if it's blue skies and how you can work around it, I also want to quickly say that there are other reasons why you may not want a blue sky in your image, and that's if you want to change your image to black and white. Like if you look at this one from Cremorne Point where it's got the amazing pink and the blues in the sky, I don't know what conditions we had that day that caused it, but by changing it to black and white, you get a whole different image out of it where the color is completely irrelevant, but you do get a lot more texture and drama and a completely different feel out of it compared to the colored version. And the same even goes for this one where I captured the sunset at the Opera House, and the way the sun was reflecting off the clouds as it was setting looks great, don't get me wrong, I mean, it's not a great image, but when you change it to black and white instead, you do get a whole different look out of it, and it almost feels like there's a storm brewing in this one, which thankfully there wasn't, otherwise I would have gotten rained on. But by having that texture in the sky and then changing the image to black and white, you do get a bit more extra flexibility than if it was just a clear blue sky, which would then look like that empty painting or half-finished painting example I mentioned earlier, which is not an ideal outcome because that's when you would have to do something like either zoom in or crop it and change the aspect ratio in comparison. So that's when having texture in the skies may come in handy, is that if you want to have both a color version and a black and white version of your image, because then you can play around and see what you can get out of it and maybe create two completely separate images of exactly the same time. The only difference is one's got color to them. I hope you guys liked this video and hope you took something away from this, like especially how you can work around clear blue skies if that's not what you wanted, or cases where you may actually want to have blue skies in your images. If you did like this video, please do give it a thumbs up. That would be greatly appreciated, and it does help that YouTube algorithm out quite a lot. And if you want to make sure you stay up to date with future videos as well, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and tick that little bell, because that way you'll know when a new video comes out. I'll leave it there for today because I know that otherwise I'm going to ramble on in 50 directions like I already have, and I'll see you in the next video. Have a good night, everyone.